I'm Jerry Browne. I'm the Democratic candidate for Legislative District 35, Position B. I currently farm in Moore, Idaho, and have been employed as a truck driver, have worked out to the penitentiary as a guard, and that's about it for the introduction. I appreciate your vote and support in November.
Thank you. Rod, go ahead.
Well, I'm Rod Furniss. I want to congratulate you on winning the primary, because wished it was that easy.
Yeah.
I'm Rod Furniss. I live in Rigby. I've actually lived there most of my life. I'm a sixth generation Idahoan, if you will. My family's all from that area. I grew up in the Manan area. My dad worked on a farm. He was a farmhand. We had lots of animals and things like that. And I'm just grateful to be running. I've been asked to run by a lot of people in Jefferson County, but I have strong roots in Fremont County. I hope to, and I've been active in politics for quite a while. I'm currently the precinct committee person in Jefferson County.
Thank you very much. The first question for both of you, and we'll go ahead and go with Rod and then Jerry. What political PACs or groups or organizations are currently campaigning for you or have endorsed you or provide money for your campaign? Face which one of those backing you. So Rod and then Jerry.
Oh, me? Oh,
Yeah, Rod then Jerry, yeah.
Oh, you know, I should have brought a list. There are several companies that have, I can think of one, the Associated General Contractors have reached out to me. They're really the only ones I can think of right now. Idaho Power has reached out to me. Mostly individuals have offered to donate to my campaign.
Thank you. And then Jerry?
Well, this election I've made a vow to myself that I wasn't going to be concerned with any political action groups or committees that are outside of the district. Whenever I receive some questionnaire from these groups, if they're not in District 35, I just discard it. Subsequently, I haven't received any endorsements. I have appeared before the Farm Bureau. I expect to be considered by them, but I don't know what the outcome is yet.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, do you support the repeal of the state grocery tax? And we're going to start with Jerry and go back to Rod.
Okay. Yes, I've always been opposed to taxing food. I just think it's morally wrong to tax food.
Rod.
I was in Boise when they were having this debate, and listening to the debate, it was quite heated on both sides, and of course they didn't get that quite done in this session. One of the holdups was the money that the state would lose because of the income tax, and one of the arguments was that a lot of people come into Idaho and buy groceries that are just passing through. I'd really like to see that tax repealed and figure out another way for the revenue to be raised.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next question is, 62,000 Idahoans are currently without health care coverage. What do you propose as a solution for those who don't have health care coverage in Idaho?
I'm in favor of closing the so-called Medicaid gap. Dr. Krill has talked very eloquently in the Post-Register several times on this issue, and he's talked about the number of people that die from the lack of health insurance. About half those, he estimates, would have died regardless, but any number of people dying, regardless of how small or how high, is too many.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rod.
You know, it's a real problem. This is my industry. I sell health and life insurance for a living, and we sell large corporations and individuals, and we design health plans, and we We put together networks and help companies save money with health insurance. But in the past, when I first got into business in 1986, I would walk into a home, and if they had diabetes or cancer, I would just have to tell them I couldn't help them. After that, though, and I don't remember the exact year, but Idaho passed a law that made health insurance affordable, accessible to all those that didn't have insurance, regardless of their health and regardless of their financial status. And I was able to walk into homes and provide health insurance for them. Then Obamacare passed. And then I wasn't able to walk into some homes and help them get health care because of their income level. And the prices of health care has gone up, so much that it's prohibitive. I'm an insurance agent. I pay $1,500 a month for my health insurance. I have 2 kids at home. I have a wife at home. And it just went up to $2,000 a month not too long ago. And I'm an agent. I think I can get the very best deal. But really what needs to happen there is that something needs to happen on a federal level. We need to repeal Obamacare. And then I'm hoping that when they do that, they'll give block grants back to the state of Idaho. And then we as legislators can go in and we can work with the insurance companies and also the hospitals and doctors, and we can design a plan that we can get back to our 1986 standards where we had the lowest health care, the best health care in the country. I think I'm uniquely qualified to help the state of Idaho with that problem if I'm elected.
Excellent responses, both of you. Thank you. Next question. Relating to that, do you support Governor Otter's proposal that never got a vote in this year's session on health care? Yes, and sorry about that.
The way that worked was that they were proposing that there were 2 waivers. And one was a waiver from the federal government so that they wouldn't have to mandate Obamacare policies. And then another waiver that would allow insurance companies to push some of the highest claims people to the Medicaid system so that they could free up money and allow more money for the people in the gap to buy insurance. Unfortunately, the federal government shut that down, and that would have been an okay way to do it. There's probably some better ways to do it. Rather than expand Medicare, I think we could get back to a free market type situation. I'd love to see a truth in healthcare bill established. We have truth in lending. If people understood healthcare and we could help them be better consumers of healthcare, we could help them understand the healthcare system better. I think the free market would take that on and provide some of the best cost insurance in the nation here in Idaho, and also have the best coverage.
Thank you. Gary.
Well, first thing I'd like to do is pick Rod's brain a little bit, and I'm not into insurance, of course, and this is the kind of person that you'd want to talk to get facts. And the one proposal of Governor Otter that would have led to 50% of the people in the gap getting health insurance. Well, you're still talking about several hundred people a year dying unnecessarily. So although it sounds good to make progress, why not close the gap completely?
Thank you. Both are good responses. We'll move on to a tax question. During the past 3 sessions, during the past session, 3 tax bills were passed. Nearly $130 million in income tax reductions will be seen. Do you think this was enough, and what more do you think should have been done to save taxpayers in Idaho during the past session? And we'll do Jerry and go to Rod.
Everybody loves a tax break, but on the other hand, I'm not in favor of a tax break for tax break's sake. If you have something that you want to be done, you simply need to pay for it. One problem I see is that a few years ago we had the Garvey program where we borrowed against future highway dollars. The current indebtedness on that program is $857 million. The debt is, the interest on that debt is $59 million from the federal, and $4 million interest paid by the state. And that debt won't be taken care of until 2032. So you've got all this money that we've already spent. At the same time, the population of the state is growing very rapidly. Highway usage is naturally going up, more cars and vehicles and driving more miles. We need to anticipate that we'll be having more expenses in highway and infrastructure maintenance, and we ought to be prepared to invest in these things.
Thank you. Excellent response there. Rod, go ahead.
You know, I have, of course, we're members of the Republican Party, and we have a far-right contingency that would say that the tax cut wasn't enough. But fortunately, with a lot of legislators, they reached across the aisle, and I think they came to a consensus, and a bipartisan consensus on the tax cut that happened. And as you go through the numbers, Idaho is one of the only few states that is fiscally balancing their budget every single year. The tax cut, with that tax cut, a lot of legislators were worried that we cut too much, that maybe there wasn't enough reserves for the highway and other things that we needed to cut for. I had breakfast with Senator Mortimer. He mentioned to me that we got right down to $30 million of extra money. It was all that was left over after the tax cut. Now that may sound like a lot of money, but on the state budget, it's not. And so we're cutting it pretty close. I don't think we cut too much, but and I do think the state is growing, and I think that the tax cuts will spur growth, and I think we'll see excess revenue come in again into the state of Idaho. We're hoping that will happen. We've had years though where we've paid, $6 million toward fire, and we've had years where we paid $67 million toward fire, and some of those things you just don't know, and so we really need more money in the coffers to make sure that Idaho doesn't have to borrow money or go too far in debt. And so I think the tax cut was just right. I would have voted for that tax cut. I'm grateful that they did what they did. We'll certainly look for more cuts next year, and I hope to be a part of that.
Both great responses. Thank you. Next question has to do with safety in schools. School safety has become a huge issue in our country. Do you support school teachers being armed? And what legislation would you propose if elected to make schools safer? And we'll go ahead and this time start with Rod and go with Jerry.
Great. I just think it's terrible when I see a school that says gun-free zone. And I would hope in the state of Idaho we have no schools with something like that on it. And I consider the safety of our children the most important thing that we can concentrate on. That being said, I think the local school districts will do the very best job to take care of that question on what guns should be in the school or out of the school, or how guns should be applied to school, whether there should be police stations in school or out of school, whether there should be armed guards there. As far as teachers being armed, I think that we should let them be armed if they want to, but on a voluntary basis. And then let principals decide where to place those teachers that are armed strategically throughout the schools. But if a teacher doesn't want to be armed, if they're not comfortable with guns, by all means we shouldn't force them. That should be a choice. But we do have teachers that are awesome individuals. Teachers in Idaho, they teach because they love the children. It's not because they get paid a whole bunch of money. And the teachers that want to be armed, they should be armed.
Excellent. Thank you. Jerry, what are your thoughts?
Well, finally, we have an issue that we have a difference of opinion on. One of the more worthless things I'm currently doing is writing a journal, mainly of my time in Vietnam, and going through the battalion situation reports, SITREPs are called. You can imagine these men have all been through basic training, 8 weeks of basic training, 8 weeks of advanced individual training before they were ever sent to Vietnam. And on average, they'd been in Vietnam for 6 months. So that's a lot of experience carrying firearms and various other weapons. Yet, going through the situation reports, I discovered at least 52 individuals that had either folded under stress, shot themselves, usually in the index finger, the trigger finger, or the foot, or shot at their own men. I've personally been shot at twice by my own men. Before we even got out of basic training, we had one man that was, I believe he was murdered. We've had numerous times where men were shot by our own helicopters. The point is I'm getting to here is a high degree of training, and it comes right down to it. People with weapons really aren't that trustworthy. To take a school teacher that's really not their forte in the first place and give them a small amount of training, which I believe would be insignificant, and give them a weapon, I think it's an outlandish proposal. I'm totally opposed to it. I believe we as a society need to come up with reasonable gun control. One of the appalling things was when I came back from Vietnam to see the same kinds of weapons that were weapons of war to be sold off the shelf. I was involved in the Laotian invasion, a 3-month campaign wherein Colonel Davison, in his history of the Vietnam War, estimates that probably around 25,000 men died. And we were in that campaign for 3 months, and our M16s had 20-round clips. And the spring in the clip was a little bit weak, so we actually only carried 18 rounds in a clip. After the invasion, we were finally issued 30-round banana clips, but we only carried 1 clip. My question is, why in the heck we could fight a full-scale invasion and not need banana clips? Why those things need to be sold on the open market to civilians? You go into a sporting goods store, and half the time the targets are human silhouettes. I do not believe for 1 second that people that are out shooting at a human silhouette are not fantasizing about shooting another human being.
Next question is, education funding was increased by $100 million during this school year session, but Idaho is still behind many states in education funding. What would you propose to help increase funding of education in our schools? And we'll do Jerry and then Rod.
Well, spend more money. Idaho's kind of in a unique situation. Because of our culture, we have a high birth rate. So it'll always be a tremendous job educating the high percentage of young people we have. On the other hand, it's a nice place to retire, so that we have a high proportion of people over 65 who aren't wage earners anymore. And these are both drains on the economy, or the whatever you want to call the money that the state has. But I believe, this goes back to what I was saying about tax breaks. Take care of the bills you have, and then take your tax breaks. We need to adequately fund education. We need to make the pay commensurate with surrounding states where our teachers aren't leaving. I know in the case of my family that my wife has made a tremendous sacrifice by staying in Idaho and teaching her entire life here in Idaho. We're not really complaining, but it could have been better.
Excellent, thank you. Rod, go ahead.
I'd just like to thank Jerry for his service in Vietnam, and I want to talk just a second about the Second Amendment rights that I have and that I'm so grateful for. That I live in an area where my father taught me to shoot. I've hunted, and I teach my children to shoot. Teach my daughter to shoot my AR-15. I have several of those. I have several other pistols that I keep in my house, and I have 30-round clips. And the reason I have an AR with a 30-round clip is so when the crook comes in my home with a 30-round clip, I got the firepower to take care of him. And no one's going to take that right away from me. I'll always believe that I should have as much firepower in my home as the crook has. And I invite any crook to come into my home and watch me exercise my Second Amendment rights. And I'm grateful that I live in a country that allows me to do that. Now, I teach gun safety. My children know how to shoot. I know how to shoot. We are very safe and conscientious. If my children are in a school and a teacher has an opportunity to defend those children, whether she be totally trained or he or she be totally trained or partially trained, at least they have a chance. They won't be sitting ducks. Now, that being said, I'm grateful that I live in an area that have great education. We spend 64% of all the money we take in the state of Idaho in education. Yet our teachers are underpaid and leaving the state for higher pay. We have got to stop our teachers from leaving. And they've passed laws now that they're helping the teachers' salaries come up, but it's not fast enough. And I think there's some creative ideas. I work with business owners and executives where we create ideas to hold and maintain key employees. I think that some of those strategies could be used in the state of Idaho to maintain and hold teachers. And we call them golden handcuffs. And we give them a little perk to make sure that they know, one, that they have a warm fuzzy and that they're appreciated. And there is something for them at the end of the day that for staying so long. And I think there's some ideas there that we can help teachers along the way. They spend their own money. They spend their own time. They're so dedicated. They come before work. They stay after work. They come on Saturday. We have the best teachers in Idaho. We need to take care of them.
Thank you.
I'd like to add something. I mentioned before that I had spent many years as a truck driver. And the idea of laying there in the sleeper of your truck and being asleep when somebody come up to rob you at night was pretty scary. And I started carrying a pistol with me. But I got to noticing that, you drive 500-600 miles a day, day after day after day, and you're there by yourself, out on the road, and maybe 10-12 hours a day, or all would be illegally. Maybe might squeeze in a few more. And the point is, by the time you pull into some place to unload, you've been under a great deal of stress. You're on edge, and if there's some tension involved, 9 times out of 10, it'd be my fault because of the conditions I just stated. And if there's going to be a mistake with a 90% chance that it'd be my fault, I would rather take a chance on somebody else getting the drop on me and me being the victim than me being the aggressor.
Thank you. The last question, then we'll open it to just concluding statements from both of you. Neither of you are incumbents, of course, and have never been elected to state representative before. What experience do you bring that you think best qualifies you for this position? And we'll go ahead and start with Ross and finish with Jerry.
They changed the names of all the stuff I've been past president of, so I got to read it. But you know, I graduated from ISU, and not that having a college degree is important, but I did graduate in business from ISU in finance, which is a study of financial statements and interest rates and risks of return. I went to work for a bank where I worked with financial statements, income statements. They hired me to forecast budgets, revenues, expenses. So I'm pretty familiar with that process. I started into insurance, and when I do bigger policies, I have to financially underwrite those policies and put them all together and make an argument for those policies financially. So so with that background, and then I've been the past president of the Idaho Insurance Agents, past president of the Financial Advisors in Idaho Falls, and the past president of the Estate Planning Council in Idaho Falls. With that background, I think I'm, just with that education and experience, I think it brings some knowledge to the legislature that they use every day over there. Every day they're talking about appropriation. Do we balance the budget? Do we have enough money to fund education and yet spend it on mentally ill and those in the gap? And so one of the things that I saw over there when I was there was that legislators are making decisions on rate of returns every day. They're saying, if I spend some money on mentally ill patients, will that save us money on the county level? Or will that keep someone out of a school that's mentally ill? Or if we spend money in this part of education, will that boost our economy in this part of the state? And those are the kind of challenges that I like. I like being able to be a part of that. I have a great desire to serve the people of this community, and I want my children to. I want to live here. I want my children to live here. I want them to be educated here. I want them to play here. I want them to shoot guns here, and I want them to stay here so that they're close to me. And I think if we handle it right, Idaho's economy will continue to grow. It'll provide jobs, and if we have lower health care insurance, they'll want to stay. I hope to bring that to the rural areas. Butte needs the industry more than anything. Jefferson County is a bedroom community without much business there. I think that I'm uniquely qualified to help those areas in business, and I hope that you'll vote for me on May 15th.
Thank you. And then Jerry, go ahead.
Okay. Well, nobody knows it all, and certainly people like Rod are some people that I would need to consult with and gain from their expertise. I've studied political science and law all my life. As I mentioned, I served in Vietnam, and I started out as a radio operator, platoon radio operator, then went to company radio operator, then a battalion in the Battalion Tactical Operations Center. I served there for 6 months, and I felt that it was very stimulating. You had access to all kinds of information. You worked with not only brigade, but Army intelligence. I came back, well, I attended Ricks College before I left, and then I came back and attended Utah State and got a degree in pre-law, attended University of Idaho Law School for 1 year before I flunked out, unfortunately. I've also worked out to the penitentiary, as I mentioned, as a guard, and I've had a lot of experience with, I call it the, one area that I'm concerned with is the over-criminalization of American society. We have the highest, the United States has the highest by far incarceration rate of what's recognized as civilized world. It's about 5 times the average. And Idaho ranks about 45th in the United States. We have the 45th lowest violent crime rate, but yet we're one of the highest incarceration rates. As a matter of fact, in the Pacific Northwest, I believe we're the highest. We have an incarceration rate, the total people under correctional supervision, that is 7 times that of Utah. And I can't believe that the Mormons in Idaho are 7 times more wicked than they are in Utah. We have, for many years, the legislature has passed laws to get tough on crime. Well, that's a neat sounding phrase, but when I worked out the penitentiary, and I'm not a perfect judge of character, but there were all kinds of young men out there that were just being warehoused, spending years of their time, lives, and I did not feel that they should probably even be in the penitentiary. There should be other programs. We have worked on this a little bit, but I believe this is a problem that has developed so much over so many years that a lot more needs to be done. We need to look at, there's even been judges that have complained about the public defender system. One judge was saying that he knew good and well that when the attorneys came into his court, that they had not even talked to the defendant. A typical felony takes 38 hours of a lawyer's time, and yet the typical public defender only spends something like 5 or 6 hours. These people are not being represented. Where was I?
Okay, Idaho prison system.
And the growth in the prison system has just been astronomical, even from the time that I've worked there. And so that's one area that we can save money, that we basically you're wasting human lives doing that. We need to be more cognizant of the value of our young people's lives.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you just take one last minute, just summarize things up, and just why people should vote for you, and then we'll conclude it from there.
I pretty well wrapped it up.
Yeah, you kind of did earlier, but if you'd like to do it again, you're welcome to.
Okay. Well, this wasn't my first effort at running for the legislature. I've run several times and I have been unsuccessful. So what I'm going for this time is a sympathy vote. Hopefully it'll work. But I'd like to thank Rod. He's the kind of guy that you can really, if you're going to run for office, you want to run against somebody that you'll learn something from and be a better candidate. And thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I don't get a chance to sit down and talk to too many Democrats, but you're one of the nicest guys I've ever talked to, and so I just appreciate all he has to offer. I appreciate his service in the military and the armed forces. There's just nothing more better than laying your life down for the country, and he's done that.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.